There's been a lot of new third-person game announcements in recent months, and a lot of them are actually looking really exciting. We've had some big reveals on upcoming Marvel projects, Team Ninja is working on an open-world samurai game, and EA even revealed its own take on the Monster Hunter genre in Wild Hearts. So let's get you up to speed on some of the most exciting games that have been announced recently. Leaving a like would really help us out, subscribe to stay up to date on the biggest upcoming games, and let's go. Maybe you already saw the trailer for the new game Wild Hearts, which came kind of out of nowhere. The game is being developed by Omega Force, the studio behind the Dynasty Warrior games. However, this will be a very different game, and looking at it, you can clearly see a lot of inspiration from the Monster Hunter games. The unique spin on this genre that Wild Hearts brings to the table is called Karakuri, which is the ability to construct helpful tools or traps on the fly. You can make offensive tools like bombs or harpoon launchers, or create mobility-based tools like platforms for jumping, or even this chopper glider hybrid. It's a really cool and unique twist that will definitely come in handy in our fight against these massive creatures. But we also see that it will be helpful in traversing the zone-based levels, another thing Wild Hearts is taking from Monster Hunter, as you can also construct zip lines on the fly to quickly traverse large parts of a level. And while these environments look gorgeous, our main focus is of course taking out these massive creatures, like the King Tusk we see in the gameplay here, who will even enrage and transform if you manage to cut off one of its tusks. We'll be able to use a variety of weapons next to our Karakuri abilities, and while the katana looks a bit standard, it does have the ability to unlink into a more chain whip-like weapon. Also, the umbrella type weapon is already looking really cool, and we've also seen a bow in action, but the most interesting weapon was the final one shown in the preview, as that one can seemingly transform between a staff, double daggers, and a massive throwing star, which really looks awesome. As a big Monster Hunter fan, this one is definitely on my list, and it's already coming out on February 17th, 2023. And another one of my favorite games that was just announced is Rise of the Ronin. If you're looking to get lost in a more realistic open world with amazing combat, then you should definitely put this one on your list. The game has only been revealed recently, but has been in development for the past 7 years at Team Ninja, of course best known for their work on the Nioh and Ninja Gaiden series. Rise of the Ronin takes place in a period of civil war between the Tokugawa shogunate and those who oppose it, where we will play as a Ronin, a warrior bound to no master. While we are of course proficient with the katana and other martial weapons, firearms will also be part of our arsenal, as we can see in the trailer with this musket that can also be used in melee thanks to the bayonet. It also sounds like there will be a lot of story choices for us to make, as the blog post reads, "The characters that you will meet all have their own brand of justice and motivations, and whether you decide to side with or against them, each decision you make will matter." I'm really excited to see how the amazing Team Ninja gameplay will transition into the open world, and the trailer already showed some cool ideas, like this glider or the grappling hook that we see here in combat, but I'm sure will also be used for traversal. We'll have to wait until 2024 to play it, and I'm honestly already getting impatient for that. We also got the Disney and Marvel Game Showcase in September, and while the overall show was pretty lackluster, we did get one cool reveal, and that's the Captain America and Black Panther game, which premiered with a teaser trailer. The project is being developed by Amy Hennig's new studio, Skydance New Media. For if you don't know who that is, she is best known for her work as the creative director on the first 3 Uncharted games. The game itself should be a narrative-driven adventure title that will feature an original story that will take players on a World War II era adventure with 4 playable heroes at different points in the story. And especially that last part is of course interesting, knowing we get to play as 4 different characters. Steve Rogers, or Captain America, will of course be one of them, as is the Black Panther. And during this time, the mantle of Black Panther is actually being worn by Azuri, who is T'Challa's grandfather, so it will be interesting to see what type of character he will be. And the final 2 characters are perhaps the most interesting, as both Howling Commandos member Gabriel Jones and Wakandan spy leader Nanali are not superheroes. So unless that changes at some point in the story, it should make the contrast between playing as them and then switching back to the superpowered Cap and Black Panther really interesting. One thing we can already rule out though is the possibility of co-op. When asked about this feature in an interview with IGN, Hennig answered with narratively yes, but gameplay mechanics wise no. And we also have no release date on this yet, but considering the fact that Hennig moved to Skydance in 2019, I don't expect we'll have to wait too long before we hear and see more. Another single player title definitely worth keeping an eye on is Ravenbound. This open world roguelite lets you explore a world inspired by Scandinavian folklore and mythology as a vessel of the Raven Raven, which for one allows you to transform into a raven at certain points to explore the pretty massive map. It's dotted with enemy encounters to challenge your combat skills, but there are also villages with quests to complete and merchants to spend your gold at. You will be powering up your character through finding cards for your deck that can give many different benefits, with the developers also stating that late game cards can synergize with each other in interesting ways. Unlocking new cards will also put them in the pool for any new character, because with this being a roguelite, it is of course expected that you are going to die. Doing so will let you choose a new vessel, and even these have different specialities, like a different weapon type they use to change up the gameplay from run to run. Ultimately, visiting 3 key locations in an area will allow you to enter the tomb. These hide the locked away golds of the elements, but getting to those requires you to fight the tomb guardian, which as you can see is a pretty powerful boss. So overall, it's a pretty interesting take on both the open world genre and the roguelite genre, with some unique ideas regarding combat and loot mechanics as well. It has no official release date yet, but a closed beta did launch very recently, so depending on how that goes, I reckon the game could make 2023. And speaking of unique ideas, have you ever wondered what Fallout would look like if it was inspired by Eastern culture instead of the United States? Well, Legendary Star Studios is working on a game like that. It's called Ashfall, not to be confused with Lithos' game by the same name, and while gameplay still looks a bit rough due to the game being early in development, character creation already looks really solid. There are the familiar Fallout style perks for you to pick to give your character an edge in certain skills, and you'll also be able to use a variety of gear and loot, which you will definitely need against some of the larger bosses in the game, like this big crayfish commander. The game has no official release date yet, but it should be releasing somewhere in 2023 on PC and mobile platforms. And if you really need your fill of Eastern and more specifically Japanese culture, then you'll be happy to know that Like a Dragon Ishin is releasing very soon. This Yakuza spin-off was never released in the West, but is now receiving a full-blown remake and will release on PlayStation and Xbox consoles and PC. You will follow the story of Sakamoto Ryoma as he plays his part in the end of the samurai era, leading Japan into a radical reformation. With this being a Yakuza game in spirit, you can expect a story with lots of twists and turns and many interesting characters to meet along the way. A wide variety of minigames will also be present, and combat will of course play a big part as well. You can swap between 4 stances, one for your blade, one for your gun, one unarmed, and one where you wield both your gun and sword simultaneously, which already allows you to perform some pretty cool combos, but the real fun starts when you start throwing in the flashy special moves like this Kamehameha-like Spirit Blast or summoning a tiger. There have been some gameplay improvements compared to the original as well, so even if you have played the original, the remake should be well worth your time. And even though it's just been announced, it's already releasing on February 21st, 2023. During the same state of play, we finally got a name for Project Eve, Stellar Blade. You might remember the game showing up in a different state of play back when it was still known as Project Eve, and even though the name is changed, the main character will still be called Eve though. And it's her task to fight the natives that have taken over Earth. You will also come in touch with the people from Xi'an, the last surviving city, and while many of them will need your help, it's really up to you how many of them you assist. The gameplay looks fast and flashy, and the developers have been hyping up the special burst and beta skills we'll be unlocking, which I'm guessing that giant gun charge up from the new trailer has to be one of those. From an earlier blog post, I was also able to learn that exploration will be part of the game as well, with the developers listing moves like scaling walls, sliding tactically, and swinging on ropes, which we can use to explore the world and find hidden treasures. No official release date for this one, but it should release somewhere in 2023. And while there's still very little info on this one, we did get a pretty massive game announcement as EA revealed that Motive is working on an all-new single-player third-person action-adventure Iron Man video game. It's currently early in development at Motive's Montreal studio and is being led by Oliver Prue, who also worked on the Guardians of the Galaxy game. We of course have no gameplay or other info, which is why we're using Anthem gameplay here, which actually kind of already nailed the flight mechanics of a large mechanical suit of armor. While that game was of course developed by BioWare, Motive actually scored the gig to make an Iron Man game because they managed to impress Marvel with their previous release Star Wars Squadrons. As noted in an interview with Games Industry, they really nailed the Star Wars pilot fantasy in that one, and I can't wait to see what they do with Iron Man, although it will likely be a while before we hear more about the actual game. Let us know which game you're looking forward to the the most in the comments and subscribe for more videos on the best upcoming third-person titles. Of course, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and if you want, you can watch our previous one with some recently announced open world games that also look very promising. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.